Hello, everybody. Hey, it's Lopan Yudrin from Akchan Gotsel in Oakland. Well, today's topic is how to die professionally. And minutes before I went on air, I heard that an acquaintance of mine, who was a very good practitioner scholar, passed away. I wasn't aware of him being near death at all. That's Stephen Goodman. Who was a scholar here at the California Institute of Integral Studies. And particularly my connection with him, I met him several times. The closest connection was that he was kind enough to come when a friend of mine and when I gave a kidney to a friend. The friend was close to Stephen, and Stephen came, I think, before dawn, to be with us before we went into surgery. And that's how I remember it anyway. And that was so kind. Everybody was kind to me when they're kind to you when you're really down. He although he was there first for Shepherd, I really felt like he was there for me too. And so I'd like to take a moment and with many times we've talked about the mantra Om Amidewa Shri, Om Amidewa Shri, which is the mantra of Amitabha. Stephen passed away about 2, I hear. So why don't we take a moment, and I'm going to bring up a picture of him. I think I got one on my desktop here. And, oh, tiny. There's Stephen. And we can just say, Om Amidewa Shri. Om Amidewa Shri. Om Amidewa. Aha Shasama. Aha Shasama. Aha Shasama. Om Benza Sattva. Om Benza Sattva. Om Benza Sattva. Om Benza Sattva. All right. So, goodbye, Stephen. It's been wonderful to know you a little bit. Thank you for your help. So many, he brought Dharma to so many people as a faculty member of a very progressive, I don't know how to put it, a university, and a scholar and a practitioner. So thank you, Stephen, for all you've done, and I wish you well on your journey. So that's right on topic, huh, isn't it? Hello, everyone. I see 3 people here today. Hi, Lori. Anybody else wants to say hi, you're very welcome. And I also want to acknowledge people who may be coming here in the future who have gotten perhaps a terminal diagnosis for an illness, and they really have a very heartfelt need to begin to learn about Tibetan Buddhist practices for the dying process and the immediate post-death process, which is what we'll be talking about today. So in Buddhism, all of life and death and what lies between one life and the next. Hello, Catherine. Oh, Sarabi, hey. Our continuous cycle. And each, there's different periods. And our life as Buddha practitioners is not begin and end. Like when most of us Western practitioners, we think, oh, we began practicing when we took refuge as a Buddhist. Maybe we were 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, and then next life, maybe there'll be a next life, But no, if we think about, we're thinking about things as Buddhists, we are thinking this is just a cycle, and like we've taken on this karmic body, which has both the elements. From Vajrayana perspective, it has many sacred elements, but also from the ordinary perspective, it's just arose from our previous karma, mental habits, and so forth. So there's nothing holy about it. So it contains, our body has these two kind of ways you can look at it. And at any rate, however you look at it, we're going to be setting it down pretty soon. The years fly by, and pretty soon, we'll all be facing this moment, and there's no other exit. As Lama Tarchin Rinpoche, I was just watching a video. I put the links for a lot of resources in the video description, so I hope you'll take advantage of that. I was just listening to Lama Tarchin Rinpoche teach on YouTube, and he was saying, yeah, there's only one end to this story. It's, there's one exit to this room, and we're all going to go through it. So this talk is about what he would used to call dying professionally. And people were ribbing me on Facebook when I put up the link to this, because it was like, oh, can I make a living at that? I guess there isn't any good money in that. Better than money is like being prepared to face passing away. So I just want to say, first of all, the first step we do as we're aging and fulfilling our job as Buddhists, to take impermanence seriously and really, acknowledge that there's going to be an end to this life, is to clean up our affairs, both externally in terms of getting rid of a lot of unnecessary stuff. That the main thing is you want to have as pristine a mind as you can when you're going through the dying process, so you're not burdened by worrying about, oh, I didn't fill out my will, these people gonna have to clean up my house for me, I feel so bad about it, got all that junk, or I wanted to give that vase to Aunt Matilda, all that stuff. I'm 61, I'm really involved in dealing with that stuff, clearing out the basement. And you can use, now we have Marie Kondo with her art of cleaning up and tidying up. And you can take and leave parts of it and leave other parts, whatever you like. But that's a really good resource. There's an audiobook version of that book by Marie Kondo, and I think there's a TV show now and everything. And it teaches you how to let go of things that you haven't used in a year, 2 years, 3 years, and you're never going to use again in reality. So do yourself a favor, and it's hard to do it all. You may want to do it all at once, like her method is very, like really go at it. Or you may want to take an hour every day and just find homes for your stuff. So you're not dealing with that when you're sick and exhausted, or worse yet, you can't deal with it because you're too sick, and you're worrying about the stuff when you're dying. That would be silly. So you have to write a will, unless everything's going to go very obviously to your husband or wife. It automatically goes there, But if you have children, you definitely have to write a will or make another plan, like a trust fund, if you have money, and get that all squared away. And so much fighting happens among children. It's horrible. So many of my friends have been through horrible things where their son, usually a brother, really feels entitled to everything. And yeah, there's financial damage, but there's also irreparable breach of faith and a broken relationship from that kind of stuff. So it's better. It's better for your And if that's all going on while you're passing away, you're on your deathbed, and immediately thereafter, it's not good for your spiritual path. So straighten all that stuff out, get on it, do it. There's advanced, you need to have an advanced directive, which you can use a standard one, or there's one called My 5 Wishes, and fill that out. Some states, you get these things, what do you call it, stamped. In others you don't. Take one to your doctor, give one, talk over with your relatives. Lori is here, and she recently had a loss, and she talked with her loved one before his passing, unexpected passing, because she went to a workshop with Julie Rogers, who's been on here before with me, from the Transitional Life Care Group. And Julie had said you have to talk to your loved ones, particularly if you're a Buddhist and everybody else is a fundamentalist Christian. You have some talking to do about how you want your passing to go. And that group, TLC, it's at tlcserves.org. tlcserves.org has a manual. There's a link to that, information about that above. And so that's really good. We have to clean all that up. And you may need a durable power of attorney for health care and possibly for your financial welfare. If you don't, I should have one. I don't have one for finance. If you're single like me, it's non-obvious who's going to be taking care of stuff for you. Take care of all that ordinary stuff. And then I would recommend that TLC Manual, because it walks you through everything you need to set up. It's very practical. It's from Buddhists. So it addresses our issues, but it's applicable to anybody else and your loved ones, no matter what their background is. Okay, so I gave you some other resources up there. Amita Lhamo is a hospice chaplain and a yogini who's done many years in retreat in the Vajrayana Buddhism. I gave you a link to her website. Hospice description of the dying process from a Western medical point of view might be helpful. So those aren't the main topics I want to talk about right now, though. Dying professionally as a Buddhist practitioner is not different than being a Buddhist practitioner. It's not like you suddenly, there's some different thing you do. I think there's sort of, I was confused about this when I was younger, so I want to really clear this up. It's not like there's some other technology that you're going to apply to this situation that is really technical, and you have to turn this way and go up here and memorize all this stuff. There's a few things you do need to know, basic things, so that you can be aware of what's happening to you and stay calm. It's the same as the Dharma you practice during your life. So, for example, what we want to do now as we come to the end of our lives, say we're in our 60s, or we're working in a COVID care unit as a healthcare provider. You should have all this in place also if you're a risk taker, if you're going to go climb Mount Everest. I mean, everybody should, but those of us who are really could go at any time need to do this stuff. And part of it, after you get the outer stuff squared away, you need to look in there, and without a sharp knife on it when you're pointing at yourself, with love, really look honestly at where are you with your practice and what do you really believe at this point, and make some decisions. So, desire, aversion, and attachment. Desire, aversion, and ignorance. These are the famous things we don't want to have as Buddhists. How much are we driven by desire right now, and for worldly pursuits? And how much of this of an agenda do we have? Like, I need, in order to be satisfied, I have this bucket list of 1,000 things in order to be satisfied that I've had a good life. That's part of the desire category. So, and how much aversion do we have? Are we still, we really have to look honestly at our minds and see, are we wrapped up in, politics, for example, are poison for our minds. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be working for what is good in this world. But I know for myself, it's very easy to bring negative thinking into my mind. What's negative thinking? I'm not being a Pollyanna here and saying we always have to think little Susie Sunshine, No. Negative thinking is divisive, dividing people into groups. There's good people and there's bad people, and I hate the bad people. I love the good people. I have resentment towards the bad people, and I deserve that resentment because I've earned it. That sort of thinking, we all know in our heart of hearts that is leading us nowhere spiritually. So we have to make a priority. It's like, are we going to be that kind of, hey, Hart, haven't seen you in a while. Nice you're here. I'm glad you're here. Are we going to be that kind of sourpuss, really, really superficial person? Because we're not. You might as well just, if you're stuck in labeling this group and that group. Even with animals, we can look at our minds and we may recognize. We can have to make a decision. Do we want to work through these prejudices? If we hate all rich people and resentful of them, do we want to work through that, or do we want to roll with it? And if we want to roll with it, there isn't any other path really. It's true. Buddhism is not for you. And so we have to decide to give up that sort of thing. Really, it's really give up poisonous thinking and really commit ourselves to Dharma, where we care about all sentient beings equally. It doesn't mean we aren't frustrated with, you guys know, you're not babies. So we can practice with animals, for example. Do we hate cockroaches? Do we hate rattlesnakes? Rats? Really work with our minds about rats and rattlesnakes. That's a place to start that's maybe less threatening than on pulling a pin out of our very fixed beliefs about certain kinds of human beings. And we can, at any time, choose to rise up into a higher way of being and take the high ground and view all sentient beings as our parents. And the other way is to view all sentient beings as our children and have that sense of care and concern for them. So think, oh, you're behaving like a jerk right now. I'm sorry, you're not really, that's not you have Buddha nature inside. That's not the way you really are, think that way. And not instead of solidifying around it. So so this is no different than Buddhism, right? But it's just Buddhism, like your hair is on fire, they say. Buddhism with a deadline. We really got to get it together before we die. And on the positive side, it's a really it's a way of framing moving towards death as a time of moving towards, yes, potential awakening, but also as a challenge. Like, can I apply? Can I really purify my mind? Can I rest in my mind's actual nature, the Buddha nature? Through this process, can I stay calm? instead of having like this thing is happening to you and everything's out of control and nothing good can come of it. It's a lot more positive, isn't it? So we need to let go of this life. You know, there's a saying from a Geshe in what was it, Chingawa? Is that his name? Maybe one of you guys can tell me. In the words of my perfect teacher, a book we've addressed quite a lot here on the channel, a 19th century work. There's a story about a great lama, and he kept saying to his student, "You have to start. You know, you could do." His student was saying, "Oh, I want to do this thing," and he said to him, "Well, you could do that, or you could. It'd be better though to start practicing Dharma." And then he would be, then he'd say, "Okay, he must want me to meditate, and I'll go meditate." And he'd sit there and he'd meditate, and then he'd run into the same lama and he'd say, "So I've been meditating a lot." He said, "Oh, that's good, but it'd be better if you practiced actual Dharma." And then he would say, "Oh, he must want me to study." So I studied and studied, and same thing. He goes back, and the guy says, "Yeah, you know, I'd really like you to practice Dharma." And then finally he says, "Well, I don't know what you mean. I've meditated, I've studied, I became a monk, I'm doing everything. I thought that's what you wanted." And he said, "You have to give up this life in your mind." So give up this life in your mind. It doesn't, and act strangely in that process, it all becomes more joyful and vivid. So we also look at our mind and we see whether our attitude is, whether our philosophy, our viewpoint, they always call it the view, it's such a strange word, perspective, is right. Do we still, coming from our culture, there's a lot of people, Dharma practitioners, come out of monotheistic cultures and religions. And now that you're facing your death, whether it's 10 minutes, 10 years away, it's a time to look and see, do I really still believe there's like a creator God and all of this is, and that's out there somewhere? Because, and when I think of dying, do I think, oh God, Jesus, whatever, Jehovah, whatever? Then there's nothing wrong with that. But that isn't a Buddhist approach to death and dying or to practice. So it's really good to, if you have questions, to study some more with, someone's a little bit scholarly. I'm not, and ask them, is this an eternalist belief? So I'll say it's called an extreme view of believing there's a God somewhere, or goddess, great spirit, that is the creative force in the universe out there. And I'm not saying you're bad if you believe that, but we come from a culture where 90% of the people, historically anyway, believe that. And so if that's going to come up for you when you're on your deathbed, go to church, go to synagogue. You define, instead of having cognitive dissonance, practicing with the Tibetan lamas because they're wonderful, hang up prayer flags because they're pretty, putting Buddhas on your shrine because they make you feel peaceful. Really, it's time to start looking and get real and look at what you really believe. And on the other hand, if you really think that death is the end of the line and there's nothingness after death, there's a big blank void, secular humanism is a nice thing. It's out there for you. Really look and see, and if you think, I really do have a nihilistic view, this extreme view that nothing's going to happen after I pass away, but I want to work it through, go work it through with a lama or another Buddhist traditions teacher. and they can help you work that through and see whether that's really what you believe and whether you could look at it any other way or not. So if you've sincerely taken refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, the Buddha is in here for us. It's for us, Vajrayana practitioners, and the Buddha is our goal. Buddhahood is our goal. Total enlightenment is our goal. And the Dharma is like the train that's going to take us there. And the Sangha is the people on the train with us. So hopefully you have a little more time. And if you don't have a Sangha, you can develop one. If you have a ways to go before you're going to pass away, maybe, then it's difficult. The Buddha, these lamas as the outer reflection of your inner Buddha, representation of your inner Buddha that's going to inspire you and wake you up. They're so easier than ever, right, to hook up with online if you have time and access to a computer. But the Sangha is hard right now, isn't it? So you might want to get into, like we're doing discussion groups online. At least you have some pure connection then. You're getting to know some people that share similar outlook and similar teachers. And in the future, try to, it's good to get together in real life too. And one of the reasons, I hate to put it in a self-serving way, is that we can support each other when we're dying. Because it may be that we're a relatively new practitioner, or we're not really studying our practice. We never developed the drive for personal practice. We've been driven more by practicing in groups, which is positive. So it's good to have people over come and practice with you when you're dying. I realize in COVID times, this may or may not be possible, but everything comes to an end. Impermanence will take even the COVID epidemic eventually, and then we'll have other problems to deal with. New ones. Because samsara is samsara. And so ideally, that's one of the functions of Sangha, and we don't do it enough. It may be idealistic. And they may, death may come in a time and situation where that's not possible. But some people know they're going to die, and they set up this situation. Surabhi's having a thunderstorm. No problem. It'll be up here forever. She's saying she may have to get off because they're having a thunderstorm out there. See that note over there? So, so figure out is there cognitive dissonance about any aspect of this path that you're on? You've got to iron that out one way or another, or change tracks. The lamas never say that. Only the Dalai Lama says that. If you're a Christian, be a really good Christian, is what he says. So, yeah. Yep, they stay up. And there's a lot of other talks on here from the past, too. Bye, if you have to say goodbye. So, this may seem basic, and things always go on much longer than I think. I'm looking at my eyes go up, they're looking at the clock at the top of my computer and saying, oh boy, we're going to practice. Well, but I feel like I should get a little further down the road here before we do that. So let me find my little notes. My notes went away. Oh, here we go. How to die professionally. So the other thing is, if you're a Mahayana or Vajrayana practitioner, you really have to have confidence in your Buddha nature. This is yes, we have our afflicted emotional mind, we have our cognitive processes that seem to go on ad nauseum. But we also have, our hearts, a continuum. The those mental and emotional phenomena are outer perceptions of the world through these deluded eyes that don't see things as they actually are. Our perception of ourselves as solid and real. That's all temporary stuff that comes and goes and is always changeable. The characteristic of samsara is changeable. But our Buddha nature, or our Rongjung Yeshe, our self-arisen wisdom, is evenly spaced. So around this cycle, remember I talked about the cycle, we've got the interim where we're living a human life, we're born, and then we live a human life, then we have interims where we're resting in a state of true meditation, we have interims where we're in a completely different phenomena with it seems to be a completely different life, maybe in a different body called dreaming. And then we have a bardo when we're a period went between a period called the bardo or intermediate period of dying. And dying is, according to the Tibetan system, this interim begins, it's called like appearances, sort of the dissolution of appearances. So it's characterized, the dying period for them doesn't start with a diagnosis from a doctor or whatever, but it's a physiological change where called the bardo dying begins with a dissolution of the appearances of this life. So it's a mental change. We'll talk about that in a minute. So develop Sangha so they can help you when you're passing, and also just because it's good to have companionship on the path. Believe in your Buddha nature. If you are the best kind of practitioner, you not only are able to rest in your actual nature, the true nature of your mind, but you're able to, you've recognized it, you've identified the true nature of your mind, you've gained experience with it, you've had realization, which means it's always continuous throughout the day and night. You're always able to rest in luminous present awareness. Then there's no bardo of dying, actually, because you're resting in that throughout the time when your body is doing whatever your body is going to do. And there's no bardo experience. It's you're recovered. Everything is fine. If you haven't practiced a lot, there's a practice called POA, the transference of consciousness. And why don't you throw up in the? Some people are still listening, I think. Why don't you throw it up in the comment box? Have you done a POA retreat and accomplished the signs of accomplishing POA or transference of consciousness? I'd like to see if there's anybody else. And if you haven't, you can put that up there too. So I haven't seen a retreat offered recently by anyone, but these come up, and actually when you see one with a good Lama that you respect, you should go for like a week retreat, or 5 days at least. And you do a retreat, which is you're imagining a Buddha above your head, just usually Amitabha. Heart hasn't done one yet, and good idea to do one. And yes, and Serbi has done one with, it's called Catherine here, has done one with one of my teachers. And so you visualize like Amitabha on our Pure Land up there above your head. And then there's lots of different specifics to the systems, but you're visualizing a central channel in your body, energetic, your subtle body, and practicing bringing your consciousness up to this aperture here, and out and merging in there with Amitabha, or Guru Rinpoche as Amitabha. And there's colors assigned, and there's a particular seed syllable representing a sound that is transferred, and it kind of mobile, and you bring it up, and you're using a sharp sound going up and going into the Pure Land. And this is symbolic, you know. So while we have not accomplished the realization of egolessness, we have a perception of having a really real body, and it's really going to die, and it's really going to be, then maybe we'll get another one, and it's very solid and substantial and real, and all our perceptions about it are the way things actually are. And while we're in that situation, then we have 8 apertures that our consciousness can leaf through. There's a feeling, and this is what will actually happen if you have that kind of body awareness. Feeling that if your consciousness leaves through a certain apertures, other than the crown aperture, that you're headed for a rebirth as a sentient being in one of the 6 realms. We want to be a sentient being again? Boring. No. No. We'd rather not. If we're gonna, we want to be another human being again, so that we can have another crack at cracking the code, so to speak. So there's this practice for doing that, and then when you really do the practice when you're dying, we'll tell you, I'll go through when you actually do that. You stay up there in that Pure Land, that represented symbolic Pure Land. Feels really good. And and actually at the end of that retreat, you can take a piece of grass, like straw, thin straw, and put it into that opening, and it sticks up. So you get a little hole in the top of your head. A little opening comes up and turns red, and I've actually walked around with them when they were doing that. I think you were there, Surabhi, in California. And could see a red dot there. Sometimes a little bit of serum oozing from the dot. So that's a practice. So when you realize egolessness and the appearances out here as appearance emptiness, not, beyond what you can perceive with your fixated, narrow mind, then you don't need to worry about the Nirmanakaya. So if you haven't practiced much, or if it never really took, you should practice. You should aim to practice the poa, and we'll talk about how to do that. When to do that, but you need to do a retreat on it. And so recommend. And another thing, if you don't have access, if the time is coming and you don't have access to accomplish the poa, Yangtang Rinpoche taught, who was a great Lama who is no longer with us, taught that you should be realistic. If you're not going to practice, you're not really going to gain, you haven't got insight into the nature of your mind, and you don't know how to rest there, and you can't sustain it for very long. You should practice the mind training of Dewa Chen. And what's that? Well, we talked about Amitabha already. Red Buddha, big red Buddha. You think then Amitabha's in a Western Pure Land, and you are always, as you go around your day, thinking, I'm going to go to that Western Pure Land. Om Ami Dewa Shri is a mantra, and you say the mantra a lot. Shuksep Lodchen Rinpoche was a great practitioner of the 20th century in Tibet, and her mom said like 1 billion Om Ami Dewa Shri mantras, just, as a regular person. And she died in perfect poise, sitting up, facing west, towards Amitabha's Pure Land, and with lots of signs of accomplishment. So We could be like her. Just always think about that. You know, there's a neighborhood in Dzogchen called Zongdo no Zondopari, Zondopari. Copper-colored mountain, in other words. That's not exactly what the translation is, right? That is Guru Rinpoche's abode. So he's another Pema family Daka, or deity. So if you feel closer to Guru Rinpoche, you can say Guru Rinpoche's mantra throughout your life, and read every day. Read the Copper-Colored Mountain Aspiration by Dzogchen Rinpoche. There's a short, medium, and long version, and it creates a whole visualization without having to do too much of that meditation thing that you haven't gotten around to. Just reading this thing, out loud or to yourself nicely, and trying to get into that space could indeed lead you to Guru Rinpoche's Copper-Colored Mountain. So in other words, what is the point of these Pure Lands? We aren't God worshippers, remember? So for us, they aren't, external powers. We can have the experience of an external power, though, if we conjure them up. Being a little risque saying that. That's how we approach it. That these are really symbolic of awareness, wisdom, our own basis. Isn't that beautiful? So by conjuring that up and by aiming and going, because we haven't stabilized the inner awakening towards these Pure Lands, we are creating a situation where it's believed that you can go into kind of like a really productive meditation retreat after you pass away. So you haven't had the kind of constitution, you're very severe ADD, for example, or you're afraid of spending time alone, or you've had so much trauma in this life that you can't sit still, or it's just too much pain. There's so many reasons why we, mood disorders, so many reasons. So that's okay. So once you're freed of this form, up through the positive aspiration of desiring to be born in a pure realm, it's very possible you could have that kind of experience and really get some good practice in, and gain a lot of, also I think you gain merit, if I'm not mistaken, from being there. Transform your mind even more positive, and at the very least have another human rebirth after that. God realm, there's some small possibility in the formless God realms of getting enlightened too, they say. 644. All right, so we've kind of got to the point where I've discussed the preliminaries of how to put your life in order, kind of the general framework for where we're going with this. And I see that we want to leave some time for practice. So I'm putting my little notes here, I'm putting a little line. Next week we'll come around and we'll do the second half of this, where we'll talk about, if you have practice in this life, what you do. That's really juicy stuff. And what are the steps of the bardo, or the interim of dying, which is also called the dying process in the hospice literature. And I'm bringing together the Western medical literature a little bit, about the physical dying process, which fits nicely with the ancient description of the physical dying process, called the 5 stages in the bardo of dissolution. Dissolution, is that the word for it? Yeah, dissolution. No. Yeah, dissolving. Dissolving. So we'll talk about the steps beyond there, about what happens or when you're in the when you start the process of withdrawing from this world, getting weaker, dehydrated, losing your metabolism is slows way down, ceases, then your respiration slows down and eventually ceases. That's the outer, called the outer respiration ending. But from the Bardo literature point of view, there's also mental changes that the person themselves can note from the inside that aren't documented in the medical literature, because those people are in the dying process, you're very withdrawn generally, unless it's a sudden passing. So they have spiritual insights in the great meditation depths of the past can bring us information about the inner state of the person and how they can practice through that whole process. And then immediately after you die, there is a period called where the outer respiration cease, but the inner respiration, meaning there's still something there that's alive, even after the person has stopped breathing. And there's been a lot of interesting research in the Western world. I recommend Erasing Death, the book by Sam Parnia, who's a emergency medicine kind of guy who is expert in resuscitation medicine. Now these days they're resuscitating people like an hour after they stop breathing by reducing their body temperature during that hour. And during that time they may not have any cognitive processes going on in the EEG. There's no sign of brain life sometimes. Sometimes they're really dead. And yet they're revivable. So what does that say about does that say there's life beyond that all important brain? That remains to be seen, but in the Tibetan system there definitely is. So we have a ways to go in this talk. Sorry. Pages. I guess I have, as usual, I always come up with 8 pages for these presentations, and I have time to do about 3. All right, well, it's nice to see you guys, and let's do some practice together. What would, let's start by visualizing Buddha Amitabha. Just get a feel for that. See if I can bring up Buddha Amitabha this one. Oh, look, I can. Like magic. Let's visualize Buddha Amitabha and say Amitabha Shri, and imagine that we're facing west and there's this huge Pure Land. There's nothing sharp there, there's nothing rough, there's no rough people there. It's only Buddhas there. And Amitabha, his entourage, I believe they're bodhisattvas. So the Buddhas and bodhisattvas, I guess. And beautiful palace, and the ground is soft, so soft that when you step on it, it just bounces back. And there's beautiful trees, every kind of fruit and flower, and anything you'd ever need grows on trees. And it's unbelievably beautiful. So as we say Om Amitabha Shri, let's place ourselves in that place with its glorious meadows and babbling brooks, and go and meet Amitabha, glorious red on his throne. and sit with his bodhisattvas. Let's do that. Om Mani Dewa. Om Mani Dewa. Om Ami Devari, Om Ami Devari, Om Ami Devari, Om Ami Devari. So now that we've kind of chilled out with Amitabha, let's do some practice for people right now. There's a lot of people dying. I actually don't know if it's more than usual. You'd think it would be. I think it is because I know the funeral home has been crowded. But because people aren't driving, then a lot of lives are saved from that. That's what I'm thinking, you know. So I don't know. But it feels like many, many people are dying, and some of them don't have the Dharma. Most of them don't. Or they're heading towards dying, and they don't have, they've never, they're surprised, you know, and it's scary. It's, as, you know, practitioners, we aren't so scared. Let's practice the Tonglen, the sending and taking practice, and think about the beings that are dying, and feel that compassionate feeling you get in your heart when you think of someone who's scared and needs protection, needs kindness. And breathe in their suffering like that dark feeling when you're scared and alone. And then breathe out into spacious, open, sky-like wonder, relaxed and open, just naturally breathing in and breathing out. Alrighty, so I guess I'll bring up the dedication of merit. We can say it together. Ooh, it disappeared. Don't have it here. Oh, well. Another camera though. It's pretty exciting. There's outdoors. Oh, a little high. There's blue sky today. Okay, I'll just say a dedication of merit then. By this merit may all obtain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy wrongdoing from the stormy ways of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara may we free all beings. Nice to see you all. Thank you for saying hello. And I'll see you next week where we'll finish up the dying process up through the actual death in the Tibetan system, which is the cessation of the inner respiration through as the subtle elements dissolve in the post-death period after we've died according to the Western system. And we'll talk about how to set up a nice situation for yourself as a practitioner, if you're able to do that, and what our backup plan is if we aren't able to do that. All right. Have a wonderful week. See you later. Bye-bye.